Before every first in the history books, there was another that history forgot. These are the forgotten first attempts in history, stories of geniuses, rebels, and total chaos that almost changed the world. What if I told you the Wright brothers weren't the first to fly? Yeah, history might have played us all big time. Let's talk about Gustav Whitehead, a German-born inventor living in the US in the early 1900s. While the Wright brothers were still tinkering with bicycle parts, Gustav was out there flying? Allegedly. In 1901, 2 full years before Kitty Hawk, Gustav Whitehead supposedly flew a steam-powered plane called Number 21 for half a mile at 50 feet off the ground in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Eyewitnesses? Yup, around 20 people, including reporters. Photos? Well, there was a photo, but it disappeared, just like Gustav's fame. Why didn't he become the father of flight? 2 reasons. 1, he didn't patent anything. 2, he didn't tell the whole world. Meanwhile, the Wright brothers patented, promoted, and proved their flights, with detailed notes, witnesses, and a strong PR game. And Gustav? He went on to make airplane designs powered by rubber bands. Seriously. Decades later, researchers dug up newspaper articles and interviews praising Whitehead's flight. Some even claimed the Smithsonian was covering it up to protect the Wright legacy. But here's the kicker. In 2013, Jane's All the World's Aircraft, the Aviation Bible, listed Whitehead as the first to fly. So, was he truly the first? Or just the first to be forgotten? Either way, if Gustav had Instagram in 1901, maybe we'd all be flying Whitehead Airlines today. Let me tell you a story about a man who lit up the world, but nobody gave him credit. Before Thomas Edison became the shining star of electricity, there was a British gentleman named Joseph Swan. Yep, Joseph Wilson Swan, a chemist from Sunderland, England. And back in the 1850s to 1860s, this guy wasn't busy inventing social media filters. Nope, he was obsessed with one thing: how to trap lightning in a glass jar. Okay, not literally, but he wanted to invent a light bulb. And guess what? In 1878, a full year before Edison, Joseph Swan actually created a working incandescent light bulb. It lit up, it glowed, it didn't explode. Success! But here's the twist. His version had a tiny problem. It wasn't super practical. The filament burned out too quickly, and it didn't last long enough to be commercial. Edison, meanwhile, was over there in America thinking, this idea is bright. Let's make it brighter and sell it. So, in 1879, Thomas Edison filed a better patent with a longer-lasting filament. Then he marketed it like a boss. Result? Edison became the Beyoncé of electricity. Swan? He became a footnote in history textbooks. But hold on, Swan wasn't just sitting in the dark crying. In 1881, he partnered with Edison to create the Edison Company. Yeah, real name. Edison plus Swan equals Ediswan. So, did Swan get some credit? Technically, yes, but in the minds of most people, Edison invented the light bulb. Swan, I literally lit up my house before that guy. So next time you turn the lights, maybe whisper a little thank you to Joseph Swan, the man who got there first but didn't glow in the spotlight. Did you know the first realistic world map was made in 1154 and it completely forgot America? That's right, before Columbus, before Google Earth, and definitely before TikTok location filters, there was one genius named Al-Idrisi. Al-Idrisi, a Muslim scholar from Morocco, was hired by a Sicilian king. Yes, Sicily had kings, and they were chill with Muslim scientists, because history is messy and awesome. The king wanted a map of the whole world. But remember, this was the 12th century. People thought dragons lived past India, and the earth had an edge. So, Al-Idrisi did what any smart man with a scroll would do. He gathered traders, travelers, ancient Greek manuscripts, and spicy gossip from caravan stops. And boom! After 15 years of hardcore researching, and probably asking, are we there yet? He created Tabula Rogeriana, the most detailed map of the medieval world. But here's the twist. There's no North America, no South America, not even a Florida-shaped mistake. Why? Because in 1154, nobody from his world knew America existed. Even the Vikings, who had accidentally discovered Canada 150 years earlier, didn't bother writing a Yelp review about it. So America was just not invited. The map was upside down too. South is at the top. Why? Because Al-Idrisi said, "Who decided North is up anyways?" Legend. So this map was used for centuries. European cartographers copied it, explorers studied it, and America? Well, America was late to the party by about 350 years. So next time someone says, "They forgot about me," just remember, so did the entire medieval world with an entire continent. The real hero of the automobile revolution was a woman with a handbag and a mission. Meet Bertha Benz, the first person in history to take a car for a long-distance road trip. And why did she do it? Was it science? Was it fame? Nope. She was visiting her mom. Yes, that's the story. The year is 1888. Carl Benz just invented the motor wagon, a strange-looking contraption with 3 wheels, a gas engine, and 0 cup holders. He built it, but didn't know what to do next. He was hesitant, nervous, maybe even scared of failure. But Bertha? She looked at that weird car and said, "Well, if I got to see my mom anyway, might as well make history." Without telling her husband, she packed her 2 teenage sons, snuck the car out of the garage at dawn, and started driving. No GPS, no gas stations, no roads made for cars, only horses, and very confused people. Along the way, she had to unclog fuel lines with her hat pin, fix the ignition with her hairpin, buy fuel, Le Groin, at a pharmacy because gas stations didn't exist, invent brake pads on the spot by asking a shoemaker to glue leather on the brakes. Basically, she was the first road trip mechanic, first long-distance driver, and first person to run out of gas at the worst possible time. She drove 106 kilometers, around 66 miles, from Mannheim to Pforzheim, proving the motor wagon actually worked, and sparking global interest. When Carl found out, he didn't scold her, he was shocked, and then famous. So the next time someone says she's just a housewife, tell them Bertha Benz drove straight into history. Hold on, you think the first telephone call in history was just, "Hello?" Well, what if I told you the first person who should have made that call never got the chance? Let's rewind to the 1860s. No TikTok, no Wi-Fi, and definitely no unlimited calling plans. But in a tiny house in Staten Island, New York, an Italian immigrant named Antonio Meucci was cooking up something revolutionary. And no, it wasn't pasta. Meucci had a dream to help his bedridden wife talk to him from another room. Sweet, right? So he invents the teletelefono, basically the OG of the telephone. By 1860, his device could transmit voice over wires. That's 16 years before Alexander Graham Bell even said "ah" into a transmitter. So why haven't you heard of Meucci? Because life isn't fair. Meucci was broke, like can't pay for a patent broke. He submitted a temporary caveat, think of it as a Save Me idea form, to the US Patent Office in 1871. But when he tried to renew it in 1874, he couldn't afford the $10 fee. Yup, $10. Meanwhile, a certain Mr. Bell came strolling into the patent office in 1876 with his idea, which looked suspiciously familiar. And guess what? Bell got the credit, the fame, the phone companies, and even the hello. Meucci, he died poor and forgotten until 2002, when the US Congress finally acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, Bell wasn't the first. So next time your phone rings, remember, the first person who truly called it never got to make the call. Hey, quick quiz. Who was the first person to sail around the entire planet? If you shouted Ferdinand Magellan, sorry buddy, he didn't even make it halfway. That's right, the guy literally has a strait named after him, but he died in the Philippines before the journey was done. Plot twist? The real first man to circle the globe was probably his enslaved interpreter. Yep, meet Enrique of Malacca, the forgotten hero with one of the craziest passports in history. Let's rewind. It's the early 1500s. Magellan is working for Spain, planning to find a westward route to the Spice Islands. He brings along Enrique, a teenager from Southeast Asia, captured during a previous voyage and now his personal interpreter. They set sail in 1519 with 5 ships, tons of supplies, and let's be honest, not enough sunscreen. 2 years in, they reach the Philippines. Magellan gets a little too involved in local politics, tries to convert a tribal king by threatening him with guns, and gets instantly speared to death in the Battle of Mactan. Oof, not a great missionary strategy. Now, here's where it gets juicy. Enrique, who spoke the local language, disappears. Some accounts say he fled, others say the crew abandoned him, but the Philippines was his home region, and if Enrique made his way back to Malacca, modern-day Malaysia, he technically completed the first full circumnavigation of the globe, starting in Europe, crossing the Atlantic, Pacific, and returning home over land. Meanwhile, the official Spanish record says, "Yay! Our guy Juan Sebastian Elcano finished the voyage and came back to Spain in 1522. True, but Elcano just returned to where he started. Enrique may have gone all the way around and back home. So next time someone asks who went around the world first, just wink and say, depends who you ask and who got to write the history book." Forget Jules Verne, forget H.G. Wells. The first true science fiction novel wasn't written by a bearded man in the 1800s with a telescope, it was written by a woman in a castle in 1666 during the freaking Great Plague. Meet Margaret Cavendish, the Duchess of Newcastle, a poet, philosopher, and fashion icon who dressed like a space princess and wrote like one too. While men of her time were busy arguing whether women had souls or not, Margaret was casually inventing multiverse theory. Her book, The Blazing World, is pure madness, in the best way possible. Plot: a woman gets kidnapped, shipwrecked, and sucked into another world for the North Pole. Yeah, the North Pole, where she becomes empress of a world full of talking bears, birdmen, fish people, and living jewels. She rules using logic, science, and some very sassy dialogue. Oh, and she literally writes herself into the story as the Empress soulmate. Talk about 4D self-insert fanfic. And guess what? There are flying ships, advanced tech, weird weaponry, alien politics, and even interdimensional travel. All this in a book written 2 centuries before Star Trek ever boldly went anywhere. But here's the twist. No one took her seriously. Critics back then called her mad, conceited, and unnatural. Why? Because she had the audacity to be smart, loud, and female in 1666. Today, Margaret Cavendish is finally getting the recognition she deserves. Think evil kings were bad? Wait till you meet the queens who ruled with poison, betrayal, and a side of murder. You think medieval queens were all grace and elegance? Then you haven't met Queen Fredegund, a woman who went from palace maid to cold-blooded queenpin of the Frankish Empire. She started off as a servant in the royal household, but Fredegund didn't do mopping, she did power moves. She seduced King Chiperic I, had his wife murdered, and married the king for herself. Promotion unlocked. But it doesn't stop there. Once she became queen, Fredegund turned medieval France into her personal Game of Thrones. Her resume? Assassinated political rivals, allegedly killed her own children if they got too ambitious, sent killers disguised as priests, poisoned, stabbed, and sabotaged anyone in her way. And her favorite hobby? Trying to assassinate her lifelong rival, Queen Brunhilde. She failed multiple times, but hey, it's the effort that counts. When her husband was assassinated, did she panic? Nope. She grabbed the reins of power, ruled as regent for her son, and continued her campaign of chaos like a boss. Fredegund died in 597 AD, peacefully in bed, which honestly is her most unbelievable accomplishment. She didn't just survive the Game of Thrones, she wrote the medieval rules, in blood with a dagger while sipping wine. Queen Ranavalona I, the Queen of Madagascar who really hated outsiders. Ever met someone who's super introverted? Now imagine that person becomes queen of an island and really, really hates strangers. Welcome to the reign of Queen Ranavalona I, the most antisocial monarch in history. In 1828, King Radama I, who welcomed Europeans, dies, and boom, his widow Ranavalona grabs the throne. Her first decree? No more Christians, no more traitors, no more Europeans messing with my island. Her rules? Missionaries? Out. Christianity? Banned. Justice system? Back to old school. Trial by poison. Yup, you drink poison. If you survive, you're innocent. If not, well, tough luck. Foreigners? Sneak in? Executed. Preach religion? Burned alive. Suspected rebellion? Crushed under rocks or thrown off cliffs. At one point, 30% of Madagascar's population gone. Purged. So, was she a bit extreme? Absolutely. But did Madagascar stay independent? Also yes. Would we RSVP to her royal banquet? Not unless we like our tea with poison. You think your mother-in-law is intense? Meet Catherine de' Medici, Queen of France, power behind the throne, and allegedly a woman who weaponized wine and dinner parties. Arsenic, also known as arsenic, if ingested, has a 100% mortality rate. Born in 1519 into the famous Medici family of Florence, she marries King Henry II of France, but he's obsessed with his mistress, Diane de Poitiers. Catherine ignored, until Henry dies in a jousting accident. That's when she stops being background decoration and becomes the queen mother of not one, not two, but 3 kings, all her sons. She's pulling strings, arranging marriages, crushing rebellions, while fans whisper that she's poisoning her enemies. And maybe they weren't wrong? Her dark reputation, cabinet full of potions and poisons, enemies mysteriously drop dead, poison rings, perfumed gloves, special wines. Then came the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in 1572. Thousands of Protestants killed in one bloody night. Many blame Catherine for triggering it. Was it strategy or straight up murder? She also loves astrology, black dresses, and creepy Italian rituals. A little golf, a lot of scary, and totally unforgettable. She died in 1589. Her legacy? Queen, survivor, strategist, and maybe the original Poison Queen. If John Wick had been a queen in medieval Eastern Europe, her name would have been Olga of Kiev. Olga was the wife of Igor, ruler of Kievan Rus. One day, Igor went to collect tribute from a nearby tribe, the Trevilians. Spoiler, they killed him, brutally, tied to trees and torn apart. Then they sent messengers to Olga, like, "Hey queen, sorry we murdered your husband. Want to marry our prince instead?" Olga, sure. She welcomed the first delegation, then had them buried alive in a giant trench, stone cold. The Trevilians were like, weird, but okay. So they sent a second delegation. She invited them to bathe before meeting her, and then she had her guards burn down the bathhouse with them inside. Revenge level unlocked. Still not done. She invited Trevilian nobles to a fake funeral feast for her husband. They drank, they partied, and then her soldiers stabbed 5,000 of them. Final act, she asked the Trevilians to surrender and requested a harmless tribute. Pigeons and sparrows from every household. Sounds cute, right? Wrong. She tied burning sulfur to their legs, let them fly home, and burned down the whole city in one night. Later, she converted to Christianity and was declared a saint. Yes, a saint. Queen Irene of Byzantium blinded her own son to rule alone. You think your mom is strict? Let me introduce you to Queen Irene of Byzantium, the woman who took tough love to medieval villain level. It's the 8th century. Irene, a noblewoman from Athens, marries Emperor Leo IV. When he dies, her son, Constantine VI, becomes emperor. But he is just a kid, so Irene takes charge as regent. At first, it's all hugs and holy icons, but as Constantine grows up, he wants power. Irene, not a fan. She starts cutting him off from the government, replacing his allies, and eventually, Constantine tries to take the throne back. Irene's response? Cool, let's settle this Byzantine style. In 797, she orders her guards to blind her own son. Not a metaphor, real, brutal, final. No eyes means no emperor. And boom, Irene becomes the first woman to rule the Byzantine Empire in her own name. Europe shook. The Pope confused. Irene unbothered. She ruled for 5 more years, then got overthrown and exiled. Karma? Maybe. Iconic? Definitely. Queen Isabella of Castile, the one behind the Inquisition. She united Spain, funded Columbus, and made Catholicism the law of the land. But behind the crown and the rosary, Queen Isabella was also the mastermind behind one of the darkest chapters in European history. Let's go back to the 15th century. Isabella becomes Queen of Castile in 1474. 5 years later, she marries Ferdinand of Aragon. Together, they became the OG power couple of Spain, uniting the kingdoms, building an empire, and doing a little persecution on the side. In 1478, the royal duo launched the Spanish Inquisition, a church-backed campaign to cleanse Spain of Jews, Muslims, and anyone not Catholic enough. Spoiler: cleanse meant torture, forced conversion, exile, or being barbecued at the stake. Isabella didn't just approve it, she was all in. Appointed inquisitors, oversaw religious policies, even expelled all Jews from Spain in 1492. Oh, and that same year, she gave a guy named Christopher Columbus a few ships to go find India. And he got very lost. So yes, she helped launch both the Inquisition and colonialism in the same lifetime. A queen with range. Isabella died in 1504, convinced she had saved Spain's soul. Today, historians are still debating, was she a saint of unity or a queen of cruelty?
You'd think kings and queens would die with dignity, but nope. Some of them went out in ways so awkward, history tried to pretend it never happened. From royal toilets to killer desserts, these are the most embarrassing royal deaths in history. King Charles VIII of France didn't die in battle. He didn't get poisoned or stabbed. He died walking to a tennis match. Seriously. 1497. Charles was 27 years old, young and full of ambition. He was staying at Chateau d'Amboise and decided to watch a game of real tennis, France's royal pastime back then. On the way through a narrow corridor, he hit his head on a low wooden lintel. Hard. But he laughed it off and kept walking. No blood, no screaming, just a royal ouch. He watched the game, chatted with guests, and then, just a few hours later, he collapsed. Dead. Doctors called it a sudden stroke. But everyone knew it was that wooden beam that ended his reign. Here's the twist. He had no male heirs. His death ended his royal line and triggered a succession crisis in France. All because the king couldn't duck. He crossed the Alps with armies, invaded Italy, dreamed of glory, and lost everything to a doorframe. You'd expect a king to die in battle, or by poison, or maybe an assassin's blade. But King Alexander I of Greece? He died because two monkeys started a fight. 1920. Alexander was just 27. He went for a walk in the royal gardens near Athens. His dog got into a scuffle with a monkey, a pet of a palace worker. The king stepped in to break it up. Bad idea. Another monkey. Monkey number 2 bit him on the leg and hand. Wounds seemed minor. Everyone thought he'd be fine, but they weren't cleaned properly. The bites got infected. Sepsis set in. Doctors tried everything, even planned to amputate his leg. Too late. After 3 weeks of agony, King Alexander died. And then, his death triggered a full-blown political crisis. His father, previously exiled, was brought back. Greece fell into instability. Some historians say this monkey bite changed the fate of modern Greece. Have you ever eaten so much you couldn't move? Now imagine being a king. and your final royal act was overeating dessert. Sounds ridiculous, right? Well, this is the 100% true story of Adolf Fredrik, the King of Sweden, the man who ate himself to death. It happened on the 12th of February, 1771. Adolf wasn't known for wars, policies, or brilliant leadership. Nope. He was often called a puppet king, signing documents, staying quiet in politics, and, apparently, eating like a legend. That evening was Shrove Tuesday, a traditional feast day before Lent. Swedes love to eat semla on this day, a fluffy bun filled with almond paste, served in hot milk. Adolf didn't stop at 1 or 2. He ate 14. And that was after a full-course royal meal. Lobster, caviar, sauerkraut, smoked herring, champagne. Because what's a better combo than fish, fermented cabbage, and 14 milk buns? Later that night, the king complained of stomach pain. And by the next morning, he was gone. No poison. No political plot. No secret assassin. Just an overloaded stomach. To this day, Adolf Fredrik is remembered as the king who ate himself to death. And the moral of the story? Dessert is sweet, but moderation is survival. Don't go full Adolf. What's the weirdest way someone could die in history? Lightning strike? Accidental poisoning? Tripping over a chicken? How about laughing to death? Yep, it happened. And not just to anyone, but to a king. Meet Martin I of Aragon, ruler of a medieval kingdom in what is now Spain. In the year 1410, Martin was in his 50s and struggling with digestive issues. He had a royal weakness for fried eel with honey. Apparently, the medieval version of junk food. On the night of his death, after one eel too many, he felt bloated and uncomfortable. So what did he do? He called in his jester to lighten the mood. The jester stepped in and delivered a joke that reportedly went like this. Your Majesty, a farmer's donkey had been missing for 10 days, and when they found it, it was drunk in the wine cellar. Simple joke. Silly punchline. But King Martin? He laughed, and laughed, and kept laughing until he couldn't breathe. Then collapsed and died on the spot. No sword, no poison, no rebellion. Just a drunk donkey, and one king with a very sensitive, funny bone. Historical records list the cause of death as uncontrollable laughter, likely triggering a heart attack or respiratory failure. And just like that, King Martin went down in history, giggling all the way. Moral of the story? Laughter is the best medicine, unless you overdose. Some kings die in battle. Some fall to betrayal. And then, there's one king who died while flexing his muscles for his girlfriend. Death by overconfidence. Meet King James II of Scotland. A fiery redhead with a quick temper and a love for warfare, but an even greater love for big cannons and being the center of attention. By 1460, James had already earned a reputation as a bold and impulsive king. He was only 29, full of ambition, and wanted to crush the English once and for all. And during the siege of Roxburgh Castle, he saw the perfect opportunity, not just to win a battle, but to look awesome doing it. James decided to impress her the medieval way. He ordered his biggest, fanciest, most intimidating cannon, freshly imported from Flanders, to be brought to the front. It gleamed in the sun. The soldiers held their breath. The king puffed his chest, rolled up his sleeves, and stood right next to the cannon. "Behold the power of your king," he declared. Muscles flexed, hair blowing in the wind, fully in his heroic movie moment. And then, boom. But the cannon didn't fire forward. It malfunctioned, exploded backwards. A huge metal shard tore into the king's upper thigh, right through the femoral artery. Blood gushed. Soldiers panicked. The queen-to-be screamed. Within minutes, King James II was dead. Still shirtless. Still flexing. Still trying to look cool, as the most unfortunate cannonball wingmen fail in history. Death in battle? Understandable. Poisoned by a rival? Classic. But death by toilet collapse? Oh yes. This is the very real story of the king who quite literally died on the throne. Enter King George II of Great Britain, an 18th century monarch, not a warrior king, not a revolutionary thinker, but a man who loved routine and took his morning bathroom break very seriously. Every morning, same time, no exceptions. Lock the door and sit down for what he likely considered the most peaceful moment of the day. This wasn't your average restroom. It was a high-raised wooden toilet built above a pit, lined with polished oak and velvet cushions. Because, royalty deserves a plush potty. And yes, it had zero plumbing, just gravity and hope. 1,760. The king, now 76 years old, followed his ritual. He stepped inside, and then the floorboards gave out. The wood, old, weakened, and probably ignored by court maintenance for decades, snapped beneath him. George plummeted straight down, his body slamming against the paneling, causing a massive blow to the chest that ruptured his aortic aneurysm, a ticking time bomb in his heart. He collapsed unconscious. He passed away minutes later. In the royal lavatory, they wore crowns, held power, and bathed history in blood. These 7 kings weren't just evil, they rewrote the meaning of madness. You think being emperor is stressful? Well, Caligula, the 3rd emperor of Rome, didn't feel much pressure. He was too busy torturing people for fun. He came to power in 37 AD, just 24 years old. At first, everyone cheered. The Senate smiled. People partied. They thought he'd bring hope after years of chaos. Then, boom, 1 year in, everything changed. After a mysterious illness, Caligula basically became a walking reality show, but make it ancient and terrifying. He threw week-long parties where guests were asked to strip to prove loyalty. He executed an entire group of gladiators because their cheering gave him a headache. He'd randomly point at people in crowds and whisper, maybe I'll have him killed today, just to stay entertained. But the real star of the show? He made his horse a government official. Yep, horse. Its name was Incitatus. It had its own house, gold jewelry, servants, and was reportedly next in line for the Senate. Too bad it couldn't speak Latin. And nobody laughed because if you laughed, you'd lose your head. If you questioned him, same fate. Eventually, after 4 years of pure madness, Caligula was assassinated by his own guards. Why? Because they were afraid they'd be next in line after the horse. Ever accidentally burned your house down? No? Good for you. Emperor Nero of Rome, on the other hand, may have taken it a bit too far. In the year 64 AD, the city of Rome, capital of the ancient world, went up in flames. For 6 days and 7 nights, the fire raged. People screamed, homes collapsed, temples crumbled, and chaos ruled. And where was Nero? Some ancient sources claim he was chilling in his palace, playing the lyre, and composing poetry about the fall of Troy. Yes, while Rome burned, he wrote poems, because why not? Now here's the weird part. Right after the fire, Nero started building a giant golden palace on the newly cleared land. Coincidence? Maybe. Suspicious? Oh, absolutely. People started whispering, Nero did it. And Nero, like a kid blaming the dog for breaking the vase, pointed at a new group. It was the Christians. At the time, Christianity was a small, misunderstood sect. Nero blamed them for the fire and launched one of the first mass persecutions in Roman history. He had them crucified, burned alive, and most infamously used as human torches to light his garden parties. Yes, garden lights made of people. Netflix couldn't write this darker. Eventually, the people turned on Nero. Facing rebellion, he took his own life. And his famous last words? "What an artist dies in me." Yeah, Nero. An artist, maybe. But also the kind who sets the stage on fire, literally. You've heard of Dracula, right? Black hair, red cape, drinks blood, sleeps in a coffin? Cool. But what if I told you the guy who inspired Dracula was way scarier than any vampire movie? His name was Vlad III. Nickname? Vlad the Impaler. In the 15th century, in the land of Wallachia, now Romania, Vlad ruled a kingdom surrounded by chaos. Turks invading, nobles scheming, people rebelling. Vlad didn't like chaos, and he had a very special method of discipline. No jail, no trials. Just big wooden spikes, pointy end up. Yes, he literally impaled people. Massive wooden stakes shoved through bodies, and not quickly. He wanted them to suffer slowly, painfully, dramatically. Think of it as the medieval version of, performance punishment. One time, an entire Turkish army approached his castle, only to find a field of 20,000 impaled bodies. Their reaction? Instant U-turn. No battle today. Thank you very much. Another time, he invited 500 backstabbing nobles to a feast, fed them, got them drunk, then locked the doors and said, "Dinner's over. Now for dessert the spike." Brutal? Yes. Effective? Also yes. So legendary that centuries later, Bram Stoker used him as the inspiration for Dracula. But remember, Dracula drinks blood. Vlad drank fear. Ever been yelled at by your dad for messing up? Well, at least he didn't smash your skull with a royal scepter. Because that's exactly what this king did. Meet Ivan the Terrible, Russia's first Tsar. Brilliant, brutal, and, yes, a little bit unhinged. The year? 1581. Ivan had been ruling for nearly 30 years. He was smart, powerful, and had a rage level set to max. This guy didn't just get mad, he created his own death squad called the Oprichnina, who would roam around Russia, executing anyone Ivan felt was a threat. Now, let's get to the juicy part. Ivan had a son also named Ivan, because why not confuse the historians? The son was bold, respected, and set to become the next Tsar. But then, disaster. One day, Ivan the dad saw his pregnant daughter-in-law wearing something he thought was too revealing. He flew into a rage and beat her so badly she miscarried. The son, rightfully furious, confronted his father. And in a burst of blind fury, Ivan the Terrible grabbed his scepter and struck his own son on the head. Blood, panic, silence. A few days later, the prince was dead. The incident was immortalized in a haunting painting. Ivan holding his son's body, eyes wide with horror, hands trembling, but too late. After that, Ivan spiraled into guilt, madness, and eventually died in 1584. Russia? It fell into chaos, with no clear heir welcome to 15 years of civil war and royal mess. Moral of the story? If you're angry, take a walk. If you're a king, put the royal stick down. Have you ever heard of a king who built towers out of human heads? No, not metaphorical heads, real ones. Welcome to the story of Tamerlane, the man who turned mass murder into architecture. His real name was Timur, also known as Tamerlane, and he ruled in the 14th century when conquering was a weekend hobby. But Timur wasn't your average conqueror. He didn't just defeat his enemies, he decorated the cities with their skulls. Take 1398, for example. He invades Delhi, capital of India. Within days, he executes 100,000 prisoners. And then, he orders his men to build a skull pyramid. Not one, several, stacked neatly, tiered like wedding cakes if your wedding was hosted by Satan. Tamerlane wasn't just a general. He was an interior designer of nightmares. Wherever he went, he left gifts, skull towers, bone walls, full-on bone cities. This was his way of saying, I came, I conquered, and I had an eye for symmetry. His empire stretched across Central Asia and the Middle East. And some of those skull towers still have traces today. Historians call him the legendary conqueror. But let's be real, he might as well be called the most evil architect in history. What do you get when you mix royal ego, golden yachts, and nationwide hunger? You get Emperor Yang of Sui, the second and last emperor of China's Sui dynasty. Born into luxury, Yang took the throne in 604 AD. And boy, did he have big dreams. His first order? Let's dig a giant canal across the entire country. That canal, known as the Grand Canal, stretched over 2,000 kilometers, the longest artificial river in the ancient world. But who dug it? Millions of peasants. With no machines, just sweat, mud, and misery. It's estimated nearly 6 million people died building his dream. Meanwhile, where was the emperor? On a floating golden palace? Sipping rare wine, surrounded by dancers and musicians. He even built over 40 palaces along the canal, so he wouldn't get bored while sailing. Basically, he turned national suffering into his personal luxury cruise. As famine spread and rebellions broke out, what did Yang do? Keep building! Eventually, in 618 AD, one of his own men had enough and assassinated him in a toilet. No throne, no palace, no Last Supper, just a royal flush. To be fair, the canal still exists today, but it's built on a foundation of bones, blood, and one man's ridiculous vanity. Have you ever heard of a king who ruled over a country he never even visited? Sounds like a bad joke? Nope, meet King Leopold II of Belgium, a man who turned colonialism into a personal business of horror. In the late 1800s, Leopold didn't conquer Congo for Belgium. He bought it. Legally. Like a villain buying a whole country on eBay. He called it the Congo Free State, but, spoiler alert, it wasn't free. It was his private playground the size of Western Europe where he could do whatever he wanted. And what did he want? Rubber. Lots of it. When rubber became the gold of the industrial age, Leopold turned Congo into a real-life horror factory. He forced the native people to harvest rubber. No pay, no breaks, no mercy. Didn't meet your quota? Get your hand chopped off. Can't work anymore because, well, no hands? Get beaten anyway. Women and children? Also targets. There are actual photos of soldiers smiling next to piles of severed hands because, yes, hands were used as proof of punishment. Meanwhile, back in Europe, Leopold was seen as a philanthropist king. He threw charity galas, built monuments, and was praised by politicians. All while millions in Congo were dying under forced labor. Eventually, journalists and missionaries started exposing the truth. The world gasped. Wait, he's not the good guy? Under pressure, Belgium took the colony away from Leopold. And what happened to him? Nothing. He died rich, peaceful and smug. Moral of the story? The most dangerous tyrants are the ones who smile for the camera while hiding a mountain of severed hands behind the curtain. You thought death was always tragic and serious? Well, not these ones. Have you ever imagined dying because of a turtle? Not from a bite, not from drowning, but from a turtle shell falling from the sky and hitting you in the head? Sounds ridiculous, right? But this is a 100% real story, the death of Aeschylus, one of ancient Greece's most famous playwrights. And let me tell you, his ending was more dramatic than anything he ever wrote. Aeschylus lived around 500 BC and is known as the father of Greek tragedy, writing plays about war, gods, fate, and you guessed it, prophecy. And prophecy is exactly where this gets weird. According to ancient sources, Aeschylus once received an ominous prophecy. You will die from a blow to the head, from something falling from above. Freaked out, he did what any logical man would do. He moved to the countryside. No roofs, no trees, nothing above his head except clouds and seagulls. He thought, if there's nothing up there, nothing can fall on me. But he forgot one thing: eagles. One sunny day, an eagle was flying overhead, carrying a turtle in its claws. To crack the shell open, the eagle needed a rock, so it looked down and thought, perfect, that guy's bald head looks flat enough. The eagle dropped the turtle, and it hit Aeschylus square in the skull. Boom. Instant death by falling turtle. The irony? One of Aeschylus's most famous plays is literally about death from the heavens. They say fate can't be avoided, especially when it's flying and hungry for turtle soup. Have you ever laughed so hard your stomach hurt? Maybe cried from laughing? That's cute. Chrysippus? He laughed so hard, he died, and this is 100% true. Let's rewind to ancient Greece around the 3rd century BC. In Athens lived a philosopher named Chrysippus, a man of serious thoughts, deep logic, and very little time for nonsense. He was basically the don't talk to me until I've solved the meaning of life type of guy. Until a donkey took him down. Not by kicking him, not by biting, but by eating figs. Yes, it happened like this. Chrysippus was out walking in his garden when he saw a donkey munching on some ripe figs that had been left in a basket. And for some reason, he thought it was hilarious. Whether it was the way the donkey chewed, or maybe he'd had a bit too much wine that day, he burst into unstoppable laughter. And then he made it worse. He pointed and shouted, "Ha ha ha! Give him some wine to wash it down!" And that's when it happened. He collapsed. Dead. Heart failure. From laughing at a donkey, eating figs. This wasn't some random man. This was Chrysippus, the guy who wrote over 700 philosophical works. And he went down because of a snack-happy donkey. To this day, he's remembered as the first documented case of death by laughter in history. And the moral of the story? Laugh all you want. Just be careful around figs and donkeys. So you like gold? Then eat it. Let me tell you one of the richest deaths in human history, and I mean that literally. Meet Marcus Licinius Crassus Rome's real estate mogul, warlord, and possibly the richest man in the ancient world. This guy wasn't just rich, he was I own, the firefighters rich. Yep, in ancient Rome, if your house caught on fire, Crassus would send his private fire brigade, but only if you agreed to sell him your house at a discount. Absolute capitalist legend. But then he got greedy. In 53 BC, Crassus marched to war against Parthia, modern-day Iran, dreaming of gold, glory, and maybe a few extra villas. Spoiler, it did not go well. He walked straight into an ambush, most of his army was wiped out, and he was captured alive. And this is where the story turns golden. The Parthian general looked at Crassus and said, "You love gold so much?" He didn't wait for an answer. They melted gold and poured it into Crassus's mouth. Yep, his final snack was liquid fortune. Historians still argue the exact details, but the message was clear. So you like gold? Then eat it. And the moral of the story? Money can't buy happiness, and it definitely shouldn't be swallowed molten. You've heard people say, "Wow, that acting was so real." But what if an actor actually dies on stage and the audience just claps because they think it's part of the show? Sounds fake? It's not. Let me tell you about the most tragically convincing performance in theater history. The year was 1958 in the UK. The BBC was broadcasting a live play called Underground. One of the lead actors, Gareth Jones, 33 years old, was known for his intense acting skills, the kind of guy who could cry on cue or fake a heart attack like a pro. And in this play, that's exactly what he had to do. His character was supposed to have a heart attack in a subway tunnel. So, the scene comes. Gareth starts trembling, grabs his chest, and collapses dramatically. The audience? Applause. His fellow actors? Keep going. The director? Brilliant! What commitment! Except it wasn't acting. Gareth had suffered a real brain aneurysm, a sudden and fatal one. He died right there on stage, live, in front of the camera. It took nearly 5 minutes for someone to realize it wasn't part of the play. A fellow actor leaned down and whispered, "Hey, it's your line." No response. That's when it hit them. The show was stopped. Viewers at home were confused. One even said, "Bold ending. Didn't expect that plot twist." And that's how Gareth Jones became the only actor in history to literally die in character on live television. He wasn't just in the moment. He became the moment. You've heard of execution by hanging, guillotine, or lethal injection, but what about death by elephant? Sounds like a joke, right? But no, it was a very real method of execution in medieval India. And no, it wasn't quick. It was a public performance. Let's rewind. There was a corrupt finance official, let's call him Mr. Patel, caught stealing from the royal treasury. The king was furious. The people were outraged. So the sentence? Death by trained war elephant. This wasn't just any elephant. This was a royal execution elephant, specially trained to kill slowly. Yes, you heard that right. SLOWLY. Picture this. The town square is packed. People are whispering. Kids are climbing on shoulders. The elephant walks out like a gladiator. It gently steps on the man's foot, then his hand. Just enough pressure to say, "See what I could do to you?" Some elephants were trained to rip limbs off or even throw the person into the air before the final stomp. But here's the plot twist. If the king saw enough suffering and decided the man had learned his lesson, he could wave his hand and the elephant would stop. Yes, the elephant could take orders mid-kill. Mr. Patel, sadly, did not get that royal mercy. One final stomp, squish, and boom. Gone. A man obsessed with gold, flattened by an elephant trained in moral lessons. Not the most heroic death, but hey, definitely one of history's most epic ones. Have you ever been so curious you tasted chemicals? No? Good. But one man did, not once, all the time. Meet Carl Wilhelm Scheele, an 18th century Swedish chemist, the guy who discovered oxygen, chlorine, manganese, molybdenum, and his own death. Scheele was a genius, but also a bit insane. Back then, there were no lab safety rules, no gloves, no warning labels. So how did he test the toxicity of a new substance? He tasted it. Yes, he tasted everything. Sulfuric acid? Mercury compounds? Arsenic? Hydrogen cyanide? And then he'd write in his journal, slightly sour, tingling throat, mild tongue numbness, interesting flavor. Seriously, Carl? He worked in a closed lab, touched everything with bare hands, and washed up using the chemicals he just invented. In 1786, he suddenly died at the age of 43. No one could tell which chemical actually killed him because he had tasted so many. Historians now refer to it as death by collective poisoning. And thus, Scheele became the patron saint of every chemistry student who ever thought, what if I just licked this? Ever looked at flight prices and thought, there's no way I'm paying that? Well, this guy took it to the next level. He literally mailed himself across the world. This is the 100% true story of Brian Robson, a young British man living in Australia in the 1960s. Brian had signed up for a work exchange program, but after a while, he got homesick and wanted to go back to the UK. One small problem? A plane ticket back then cost more than 3 months of his entire salary. So what did he do? With the help of 2 buddies, Brian decided to ship himself home in a wooden box. The plan? Fold himself up in a tiny crate with a pillow, flashlight, water bottle, and a homemade air pipe. Label the box, fragile, this side up, Mackin parts. Shipping time, estimated 36 hours. Now here's where it goes full comedy. Instead of being flown straight to London, Brian's box got rerouted to Los Angeles and sat in a warehouse for nearly 5 days. Inside the box, Brian passed out from lack of air. No one knew he was there. He couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't even knock. Luckily, an airport worker finally opened the crate, and surprise! There was a half-dead guy inside, clutching a flashlight and a soggy water bottle. Brian survived, barely. His story made international headlines. But get this. The Australian government didn't even prosecute him because there were literally no laws against mailing yourself at the time. Today, Brian's story is legendary, a mix of stupidity, guts, and innovative travel budgeting. And if you're thinking, nobody else would ever try this, just know, at least 3 more people did. Not all of them were as lucky. History, fact, that are wrong. Did Einstein really fail math? Yeah, except that's totally fake news. Let's rewind. Albert Einstein, born in Germany in 1879, wasn't some clueless kid with a calculator phobia. By age 12, he was solving algebra and geometry problems for fun. By 15, he had already mastered calculus. So where did the myth come from? In 1895, 16-year-old Einstein took the entrance exam for a prestigious Swiss school. He aced math and physics, but flunked French and history. People misheard Einstein failed an exam and twisted it into he failed math.
No!
But wait, it gets dumber. Back then, German schools used a grading scale where 1 was the highest score. Years later, someone saw Einstein's old report card full of 1S and thought he was failing everything. Nope, he was basically the valedictorian. So yeah, Einstein didn't fail math.
No!
The real failure? Whoever spread that rumor in the first place. Did King Henry VIII have 6 wives just because he loved women?
Wow!
It's a juicy idea sex weddings, fancy gowns, royal drama. Sounds like a 16th century soap opera. But no, Henry wasn't in it for love. He was in it for a son, heir. The entire 6-wife saga? Not about romance. It was a desperate campaign to secure the Tudor bloodline. and let's be honest, wasn't very good at it. His first wife stayed loyal for over 20 years. She endured countless pregnancies and personal heartbreak, but only gave him a daughter. That wasn't enough. He tried to annul the marriage, got blocked by the Pope, and said, "Fine, I'll start my own church." Royal pettiness at its peak. The next one? Young, clever, charismatic, promised him sons. Delivered another daughter. People whispered about her behind her back and eventually to Henry's face. He called for the axe. The third seemed perfect. Gentle, obedient, and finally a boy.
Wow!
Henry rejoiced. For about 2 weeks, she died shortly after childbirth.
No! God,
He never
please,
forgave
no,
fate for
no,
giving him success
no,
and taking it away that fast. Number 4 was a political match. They met. He panicked. He said she looked nothing like her portrait. No chemistry, no patience. He ran for the divorce papers before the ink on the wedding invite dried. Then came the party girl. Too young, too flirty, too careless in a court full of spies. When rumors reached the king, he felt humiliated and furious. The last one? She knew how to play the game. She read theology, treated his ulcers, kept her head down, and outlived him. So, was Henry a womanizer? Not exactly. He wasn't chasing love. He was chasing a male ruthlessly, recklessly, and with zero chill. 6 marriages weren't passion. They were panic in a crown. Did Vikings really wear horned helmets? Close your eyes and picture a Viking. Big beard, giant axe, helmet with 2 massive horns. Now open your eyes and erase the horns, because that part, total myth. Let's rewind. It's the year 873. Somewhere near a fjord, a Viking warrior is tightening the straps of his helmet. It's made of iron, domed, battle-tested, and completely hornless. Why? Because real Vikings weren't trying to look cool. They were trying to not die in battle. Here's what history tells us. Out of all Viking helmets ever discovered actual archaeological finds not, a single one had horns. So, where did the horned helmet idea come from? Fast forward to the 1800s. A few romantic artists in Europe wanted Vikings to look more epic in paintings. So they added horns.
Wow!
Then came Wagner's opera. In 1876, epic music, dramatic costumes, and warriors with huge horned helmets that looked like satellite dishes. Audiences loved it. The image stuck.
Wow!
But real Vikings? They wore what worked. Leather or iron helmets, fur cloaks, and a permanent scowl. If you showed up with horns sticking out of your head, you wouldn't last a minute in a shield wall. They'd grab your helmet like a handle and pull you off the boat. So the answer is simple. Number Vikings did not wear horned helmets. They wore practical gear. The horns came from 19th century opera and maybe a little too much imagination. Did Thomas Edison really invent the light bulb? Thomas Edison, man with 1,093 patents, the Wizard of Menlo Park, the guy your science teacher worshipped, did not invent the light bulb. Wait, what? That's right. When Edison filed his famous patent in 1879, the light bulb already existed. In fact, dozens of inventors had been tinkering with electric light for decades. The earliest version? Way back in 1800, when Italian scientist Alessandro Volta created a glowing wire using his new invention, the voltaic pile, basically the first battery. Then came Humphrey Davy, who lit up a piece of carbon with electric current. Boom! The arc lamp was born, bright as the sun, and about as subtle. Throughout the 1800s, inventors tried everything. Platinum wires, charcoal filaments, even blowing glass by hand in their sheds. By the time Edison entered the scene, at least 22 different versions of the light bulb already existed. So Nohe didn't invent the idea. So, what did Edison actually do? This is where it gets good. Edison didn't invent the bulby. perfected it. He found the right filament, carbonized bamboo, which could burn for over 1,200 hours, created a reliable vacuum, and most importantly, built an entire system to generate and distribute electricity to homes. Basically, he made the light bulb practical and commercial. Before Edison, bulbs were science fair projects. After Edison, they lit up cities. So was he a genius? Yes. Was he the original inventor of the light bulb? Nope. Did Christopher Columbus really discover America? Ah, yes. The classic schoolbook line. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and discovered America. But hold up, discovered? Really? When Columbus landed in the Bahamas in 1492, there were already millions of people living across the Americas. Cities, civilizations, farmers, warriors, astronomers. Imagine walking into someone's house, sitting on their couch, and proudly declaring, "I discovered this." Yeah, that's the vibe. Columbus wasn't even the first non-indigenous person to set foot in the Americas. Around 500 years earlier, Leif Erikson, a Viking explorer from Iceland, sailed to what we now call Canada. He called it Vinland. He didn't stick around, but still, he beat Columbus by centuries. So what did Columbus do? Well, he was trying to reach Asia, China, India, spices galore. Instead, he bumped into the Caribbean and thought he was in somewhere near India. That's why he called the locals Indians. Spoiler, he was very wrong. But here's where it gets messy and important. While he didn't discover a new continent, Columbus did connect Europe to the Americas in a way that kicked off global trade, colonization, and, let's be honest, centuries of chaos. His voyages began what's known as the Columbian exchange foods, animals, diseases, ideas, and empires flying back and forth across the Atlantic. So, was Columbus the first? No. Was he lost? Absolutely. But did he change the world? Big time. Was Napoleon really that short? Let's talk about the world's most misunderstood short king. Except, he wasn't actually short. We're talking about Napoleon Bonaparte, the Corsican-born military genius who rose from a nobody to Emperor of France, almost ruled all of Europe, and still somehow ended up remembered as fun-sized.
No!
But here's the thing. This short Napoleon stuff? It's one of history's longest-running jokes. And it all started with British propaganda. Napoleon was France's superstar, marching through Europe, winning battles, reforming laws, and crowning himself emperor. The British? Terrified and salty. So they did what any clever enemy would do, they attacked his image. British cartoonists began drawing Napoleon as this tiny, furious man, throwing tantrums, yelling at huge soldiers. And it worked. The world started believing Napoleon was pocket-sized. Now, here comes the kicker. Napoleon's official recorded height was 5 pides 2 pouces. Sounds like 5 feet 2 inches, right? Super short. But wait, those were French inches, not British ones. And French inches were bigger. When you convert them correctly, Napoleon's height was actually around 5 foot, 6.5 inches. That's about 1.69 meters. Totally average for a Frenchman back then. So, Napoleon wasn't short, just mistranslated. So, was Napoleon short? No. He was the right height, just the wrong enemy. Hello, everyone. Today we will talk about the most painful venoms in the world. The bullet ant. Welcome to the world of tiny but mighty creatures, where one ant species holds an incredibly powerful martial arts secret, the bullet ant, Paraponera clavata. This large ant, found in the Amazon rainforest, is famous not just for its size, but also for its secret weapon, ponerotoxin, a neurotoxin that can make you forget all your worries because you'll be too busy, hurting. Just imagine this. You're casually strolling through the jungle when suddenly you feel a tiny prick, like a pinprick. Ah, probably just a mosquito, you think to yourself. But no. Seconds later, that tiny prick erupts into an excruciating, burning pain, as if someone just poured a glass of molten lava into your veins. Then the pain transitions into severe muscle cramps, your muscles twitching uncontrollably, as if you're participating in an intense, unregistered workout session. Many victims describe the pain of ponerotoxin as being nailed to the foot or constantly electrocuted. Some even humorously claim it feels like playing the piano with your big toe on a hot grill. And the best part? This pain isn't fleeting. It can last for 12 to 24 continuous hours. You might endure a long, restless night, your body writhing in the dance of the venom. Perhaps this is nature's way of reminding us, don't mess with things that aren't yours, especially when they're nicknamed bullet. While not directly fatal, this venom will certainly teach you a painful and unforgettable lesson about respecting the wild. And perhaps, after that experience, every other pain in your life will seem insignificant. Stonefish, I will take you down to the bottom of the sea, where vibrant coral reefs abound, and a fish that looks exactly like a grungy rock is lying in wait for you to step into your destiny.
Wow!
This is the stonefish, Sinancia spp, the most venomous fish in the world and such a brilliant artist of disguise. Stonefish are masters of stealth. They lie perfectly still on the seabed, camouflaged flawlessly as a rock or a piece of coral. They don't bother with flashy swimming or aggressive hunting. Their sole objective is to patiently wait for some unlucky soul to accidentally step on them, and that's when the pain party truly begins. When a creature steps on a stonefish, it doesn't bite. Instead, it possesses a row of 13 sharp, venomous spines hidden along its back. The pressure from the step causes these spines to erect and inject a potent dose of extremely powerful venom into the victim. The pain is described as horrific, unbearable, as if someone just poured hot acid into the wound and then repeatedly hit it with a sledgehammer. The pain is so intense, you'll just want to faint to make it stop. Stonefish venom contains neurotoxins and cytotoxins that can cause severe swelling, tissue necrosis, fever, convulsions, and in rare cases, even death. So, next time you go snorkeling or stroll along the beach, remember to look very carefully. The Brazilian wandering spider. Let's rewind to the steamy rainforests of Brazil. It's hot, it's humid, and deep in the banana plantations, something lurks. Not a jaguar, not a snake. Worse, a spider. Not just any spider, the Brazilian wandering spider, also known as Phoeneutria nigriventer. The name Phoeneutria literally means murderous in Greek. Comforting, right? This spider doesn't build a web like a polite houseguest.
No!
Nope, it wanders. At night. In your shoes, your closet, your underwear drawer. It's basically the ninja of the spider world, except way more toxic, both emotionally and chemically. In 2007, a guy in Sao Paulo bit into a banana and found one inside. He sued the supermarket. The spider sued nobody because it was too busy planning its next horror appearance. Now, let's talk venom. It's one of the most potent neurotoxins known to man. You get bit, and boom. Intense pain, muscle spasms, sweating, trouble breathing. And if you're male, well, you get an unwanted and prolonged side effect that's been politely described in scientific journals as priapism. Here's the kicker. Scientists were so impressed by this venom's performance effects, they actually studied it for use in ED treatments. Yes, the world's most terrifying spider may someday save date night. So next time you're in Brazil and see a banana wiggling, don't scream. Just politely hand it back and walk away. In the deep rainforests of Brazil, there lives a caterpillar. It's fluffy, it's slow, it looks like a piece of dust stuck to a leaf. But this, my friend, is no plush toy. This is Lonomia obliqua, the deadliest caterpillar in the world. Let's rewind. Back in the 1980s, people in southern Brazil started arriving at hospitals with a weird problem. They were bleeding from everywhere. Nose, gums, eyes, even organs. Doctors were confused. There were no cuts, no bites, no bruises, just bleeding. Eventually, someone noticed a pattern. All the patients had been near trees, and all of them had brushed against fuzzy-looking caterpillars. Turns out, Lonomia doesn't sting. It doesn't bite. It accidentally kills you by sitting there and being soft. Its tiny bristles are loaded with anticoagulant venom, a toxin that prevents your blood from clotting. Touch it once, and your body starts turning into a leaky faucet. Today, Lonomia has caused dozens of confirmed deaths, most of them because someone leaned on a tree or hugged it. Don't do that. The most tragic part? It looks like something you'd find in a kid's sticker book. To make things even weirder, scientists now use Lonomia venom to research new medicines for strokes and blood clots. So yes, the fuzzy murderer may one day save your life. But right now, it's hiding in plain sight, looking like a sock that fell off a branch. Deep in the Australian outback, where even the flies seem dangerous, lives a snake so toxic, it makes cobras look like amateurs. Meet the inland taipan, also known as the fierce snake. Though, honestly, it's more like the terrifyingly polite snake. Why? Because it's shy. It avoids people. And it's so elusive that most Australians have never seen one in the wild. Now, let's talk venom. One bite from this snake delivers the most potent venom of any land animal. How potent? Enough to kill 100 adult humans with a single dose. Or 250,000 mice, but that's less relatable. Its venom is a deadly mix of neurotoxins, procoagulants, and myotoxins. Which means your nerves stop firing, your muscles shut down, and your blood starts clotting in all the wrong places. Within 30 to 45 minutes, it's lights out, permanently. But here's the strange part. Despite being insanely lethal, the inland taipan has almost no confirmed human deaths. Why? Because it's basically a venomous monk. It lives in remote desert cracks, avoids conflict, and only strikes when extremely provoked. Scientists love it in a respectful, terrified way. Its venom is helping develop new treatments for heart attacks and strokes. So yes, this snake might one day save lives. But today, it's just sitting quietly in the desert, waiting for no one. Let me tell you about a creature that doesn't run, doesn't roar, and doesn't even care you exist, until you step too close. Meet the Gila monster, also known by his science fair name, Heloderma suspectum. Yes, even his name sounds suspicious. This chunky lizard is about half a meter long, covered in beady, bumpy scales that its colors, black and orange or pink, like a Halloween-themed sausage with legs. You won't find him running across the desert. Nope, the Gila monster spends most of his time hiding under rocks, sleeping in burrows, or chilling in cactus shade, probably dreaming of scaring the next hiker. But here's the thing. If you try to touch him, or accidentally sit on him, please don't. He won't run away. He'll bite, and he won't let go. Unlike snakes, this lizard doesn't deliver venom through fangs. Instead, he chews slowly, pumping venom through grooves in his teeth like a horror film in slow motion. You pull away, he clamps harder. You scream, he continues his meal, called your hand. The venom won't usually kill you, but it causes burning pain, swelling, dizziness, and the overwhelming sense that you've made very poor choices. It's the kind of bite that turns a nature walk into an emergency room visit. And here's the plot twist. Despite his creepy chewing habits, the Gila monster's venom was used to develop exenatide, a drug that helps treat type 2 diabetes. So yes, this grumpy, toxic sausage now helps save lives.
What do a piano, a banana raft, and a car trunk have in common? They all helped someone escape captivity in the most unexpected ways. These are the world's most dramatic and most creative escape stories in history. The Great Escape: 600 men, 3 tunnels, and a spoon. During World War II, the Nazis built a super high security prison for captured Allied airmen. They called it Stalag Luft 3. High fences, armed guards, watchtowers, dogs. It was supposed to be escape-proof. So what did the prisoners do? They planned the biggest breakout ever. Not 1 tunnel, but 3. They named them Tom, Dick, and Harry. Very casual, very British. With over 600 men involved, they spent a whole year digging, using spoons, bedboards, tin cans, and pure British stubbornness. They even built a railway system inside the tunnel and a ventilation pipe out of powdered milk tins. Oh, and disguises. Some prisoners made fake German uniforms, travel documents, and even practiced walking like civilians. It was part prison break, part theater production. On the night of March 24th, 1944, 76 men crawled out of Tunnel Harry, but then someone tripped a wire. Alarms, dogs, chaos. Only 3 actually escaped to freedom. The rest captured, and 50 of them were tragically executed. Still, this story became legend. Books, movies, Steve McQueen on a motorcycle. Never underestimate bored prisoners with time, tools, and British sarcasm. The Great Escape, because sometimes the best way out is down. The Alcatraz Escape, gone without a trace. Alcatraz, the Rock, a prison stuck in the middle of shark-infested waters off of San Francisco. It was supposed to be escape-proof. The guards believed no one could survive the icy currents, strong tides, and terrifying paperwork. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, John and Clarence, all bank robbers, all very clever, and very, very tired of being locked up. So what did they do? They spent months using spoons stolen from the cafeteria to dig through the concrete walls of their cells, behind the vent. They covered the holes with cardboard, painted to look exactly like the wall. But wait, they didn't just dig. They made dummy heads out of soap, toilet paper, and real hair to fool the guards during bed checks. Yes, hair. They got it from the prison barber. And for their escape across the freezing bay, they stitched together a raft using over 50 stolen raincoats. That's right, fashion and function. On the night of June 11th, 1962, they crawled through the holes into a service corridor, climbed the pipes, reached the roof, and then vanished into the dark waters. The next morning, empty beds, fake heads, panic. FBI says they drowned, but no bodies were ever found. Years later, a letter arrived. "I'm still alive." Coincidence or confession? No one knows for sure, but one thing's certain. It was the slickest, smartest, most stylish escape in prison history. Bonhoeffer, the pastor who fought Hitler with a piano. Germany, 1943. The Nazis were everywhere, and if you dared to question them, you didn't get a second chance. But one man stood up, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a pastor, a theologian, and secretly part of the German resistance. He didn't carry a gun, he carried a Bible and a piano. After being arrested for helping Jews escape, Bonhoeffer was imprisoned. But what the Nazis didn't know was the man had rhythm. You see, Bonhoeffer composed music in prison. Beautiful hymns, sure, but also secret codes. He'd hide messages in musical compositions and pass them out as gifts to fellow inmates and guards. He used musical phrasing, lyrics, and timing as a kind of Morse code, sending info to the outside world about Nazi plans and resistance activity. The man basically turned a piano into a spy machine. Now, this wasn't a full-blown prison escape. He didn't dig a tunnel or crawl through pipes. But he mentally and spiritually escaped, smuggling truth and hope past prison walls, one note at a time. In 1945, just weeks before the war ended, Bonhoeffer was executed. But his words and music lived on, powerful, subversive, and deeply human. So the next time someone says music can't change the world, tell them one man fought Hitler with sheet music. The Colditz Glider. When prisoners built a plane in the attic. Imagine you're a British POW in Nazi Germany, 1945. You're locked inside Colditz Castle, a medieval fortress turned escape-proof prison for the most escape-prone Allied officers. What do? Dig a tunnel? Nope. Climb the wall? Too risky. These guys went full genius. They decided to build a glider plane. Yes, a real, working glider in the attic. Using bed slats, floorboards, electrical wires, and stolen bed sheets, two prisoners, Jack Best and Bill Goldfinch, secretly constructed a two-man aircraft inside a hidden loft. They called it the Colditz Cock. They even designed a catapult launch system using bathtubs filled with concrete and rubber cords. The plan? Launch the glider off the castle roof, fly over the river, and glide to freedom. For months, they hid the noise, materials, and even built a dummy wall to conceal the whole project. But just as they were about to launch, the war ended. No flight, no test. But the glider was real. Years later, engineers rebuilt it. And yes, it actually flew. So yeah, next time you're stuck somewhere, remember, some guys once tried to escape a Nazi prison with a homemade airplane. Casanova's escape. A fork, a bedsheet, and a whole lot of style. Venice, 1756. Giacomo Casanova, adventurer, seducer, philosopher, and apparently prison escape artist. He was thrown into the Leeds prison, a dungeon inside the Doge Palace, known for its lead-lined roof and unbearable heat. His crime? Too charming. Okay, technically it was corrupting public morals. Basically, he flirted with the wrong nun. Locked in a cell with barred windows and stone walls, Casanova got to work. First, he found a metal spike hidden inside a book. Then he used it and a fork to dig through the floor of his cell. But before he could escape, guards moved him to another cell. Did he give up? Nope. He befriended another prisoner, Father Balbi, and the two launched Plan B. Rip up bedsheets, make a rope, climb into the attic, break out through the ceiling. On Halloween night, 1756, they popped open the roof, climbed out, and walked straight out the front door of the Doge Palace, in full view of the city, like gentlemen. Because Casanova never escapes in a rush, he escapes with flair. Later, he even wrote a book about it. The Story of My Escape. Because what's the point of escaping if you don't get to brag? Escape from East Berlin, the car that drove through a wall. Berlin is split in two, east and west. Freedom on one side, surveillance, spies, and secret police on the other. Then they built a wall. Concrete, barbed wire, guard towers, landmines. Basically, the world's worst neighbor fence. And yet, thousands of people tried to escape East Berlin. Some tunneled, some swam, some even flew in homemade hot air balloons. But one of the wildest escapes involved a car with a trunk full of freedom. Meet Wolfgang Engels, East German soldier by day, escape artist by night. In 1963, he stole an armored personnel carrier, crashed it straight for the Berlin Wall, and just kept driving. Yes, he literally punched a hole in the wall. He got stuck, got shot. But West Germans pulled him out and carried him to freedom like a rock star. Families hid kids under seats, in secret compartments, or disguised as suitcases. Each escape more clever than the last. Between 1961 and 1989, over 5,000 people escaped across the wall. Some didn't make it, but many did. And when the wall finally fell in 1989, it wasn't a crash, it was a flood. Because freedom doesn't wait in traffic, it drives right through. Papillon, the man who escaped with a raft of bananas, 1933. Henri Charrier, aka Papillon, a French safecracker with a butterfly tattoo and a very big problem. He's just been sentenced to life in a penal colony for a murder he swears he didn't commit. His destination? Devil's Island, a brutal prison in French Guiana. Tropical diseases, sharks, and guards who really don't like escapees. But Papillon? Oh, he's not staying. Over the next 13 years, he makes 9 escape attempts. Yes, 9. One time, he jumped off a cliff into shark-infested water, just for a shot at freedom. Another time, he floated away on a raft made from coconuts and banana sacks. He befriended lepers. He hid in the jungle. He was recaptured, beaten, and thrown in solitary for 2 years straight. But nothing, not bugs, not guards, not the ocean, could break his will. In 1945, on his final escape, he jumped from a cliff with a homemade raft of coconuts. And this time, he made it. Years later, he wrote Papillon, the memoir of his escapes, which became a bestseller and a Hollywood movie. So, if you think your Monday is hard, remember, one man survived Devil's Island with bananas, bugs, and sheer willpower. What happens when science, power, and human error collide? From Chernobyl's exploding core to Japan's glowing ocean, here are the nuclear disasters the world can't afford to forget. Chernobyl, 1986, the nuclear test that blew up a city. Think just a test sounds safe? Not when it's 1986 in the Soviet Union, and you're testing a nuclear reactor at night with tired engineers who have been told to ignore every warning system. Yes, welcome to Chernobyl, the site of the biggest nuclear oops in human history. The plan? Run a safety drill. The result? Blow up a nuclear core. They wanted to see what would happen if the power went out. So, like geniuses, they turned off the emergency systems, one by one. Then the reactor got unstable. Someone panicked. Boom! Pressure exploded. The core ripped open, and radioactive fire shot into the sky. People in nearby towns saw a glowing cloud and thought, must be a light show. Nope, that was death glitter. 2 workers died instantly. Dozens more in the weeks after. Thousands were exposed. 200,000 people were evacuated. And the cleanup? They sent in robots, but they broke down. So they sent in humans, in t-shirts and jeans. Seriously. The Soviet Union tried to cover it up, but the radiation said, "Surprise, Sweden," because the wind carried it across Europe. Today, Chernobyl is a ghost city, and that test, let's just say, it failed spectacularly. Fukushima, 2011, the disaster that surfed in. March 11th, 2011, Japan gets hit by a massive 9-point earthquake. Buildings sway like noodles, but Mother Nature isn't done yet. She sends a 14-meter tsunami straight at the coast. And guess what's waiting there? A nuclear power plant. The Fukushima Daiichi plant had 6 reactors and a terrible sense of timing. When the earthquake hit, the reactors automatically shut down. Great! But they needed cooling, so the emergency generators kicked in. Then the tsunami showed up and said, nope. The waves crashed over the sea wall, flooded the backup generators, and knocked everything out. With no cooling, the temperature rose. Fuel rods melted, hydrogen built up. Then, boom, boom, boom. 3 massive explosions in 3 separate reactors. The plant looked like a Michael Bay movie. Radiation started leaking. The government said everything's under control. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Over 150,000 people evacuated. Farmers had to kill livestock they couldn't sell. Contaminated water leaked into the Pacific Ocean. Japan went from sushi to radioactive sushi rumors. Robots sent inside kept dying. The radiation was that bad. Eventually, they had to build a giant ice wall to freeze the ground and stop the spread. Even now, cleanup is expected to take 30 to 40 years. Fukushima wasn't caused by war. It wasn't sabotage. It was nature saying, "Bet you didn't plan for this one." Kishtim 1957, the nuclear disaster nobody was allowed to know about. Imagine a nuclear disaster so big it spread radiation over 20,000 square kilometers, forced 10,000 people to evacuate, and created a radioactive dead zone called the East Ural Radioactive Trace. Welcome to Kishtim 1957, the 3rd worst nuclear disaster in history that the Soviet Union kept secret for 30 years. So, what happened? In the town of Chelyabinsk 40, a place so secret it didn't appear on any map, the Soviets were busy building nuclear bombs. At the Mayak plant, they stored highly radioactive waste in cooling tanks. One tank, its cooling system failed for a year. But hey, why fix it when you can ignore it? The waste overheated. Pressure built up, and on September 29th, 1957, the tank exploded with a force of 75 tons of TNT. It blasted a plume of radioactive dust into the sky. No alarms, no media, just glowing silence. The Soviet response? Send in soldiers, evacuate villages quietly, tell no one. Even the people being evacuated didn't know why they had to leave. It wasn't until Western satellites noticed something weird in the 1970s that the world went, wait, what happened in Russia? Today, many parts of that zone are still uninhabitable. and Chelyabinsk, it became known as the most polluted place on Earth. Kishtim is proof that when you mix radiation with secrecy, you don't just get disaster, you get a cover-up glowing in the dark. SL-1, 1961, the nuclear reactor that yeeted a man into the ceiling. Let's talk about America's only fatal nuclear reactor accident. And yes, it involves a guy being launched into the ceiling. Welcome to SL-1, 1961, an experimental nuclear reactor in Idaho. Tiny, remote, and built for military research. What could go wrong? 3 men were working the night shift during the New Year holiday. Cold, bored, cramped. Now, nuclear reactors have control rods that regulate how fast reactions happen. You pull them out, the reaction speeds up. You push them in, it slows down. One rod, the central one, was stuck, and one of the men decided to give it a good yank. But he pulled it too far, too fast, by 20 inches. In less than 4 milliseconds, the core went supercritical. Massive steam explosion. The 26,000-pound reactor jumped off the ground, and one of the men, he was impaled through the pelvis by a metal rod and pinned to the ceiling. The other 2 were killed instantly. The radiation was so high that even rescuers needed robot arms and lead suits. Then they buried the victims in lead-lined coffins inside concrete vaults. And the reactor? Disassembled, buried, forgotten. Like a haunted science experiment nobody wants to talk about. So yeah, nuclear energy is powerful. And apparently, so are control rods in the hands of bored engineers. Windscale Fire, 1957. The nuclear disaster Britain pretended didn't happen. Let's talk about the UK's first and biggest nuclear disaster. Welcome to Windscale, 1957. Back then, Britain was racing to build nuclear bombs. They rushed the science. Because, hey, what could go wrong with a superheated reactor made of graphite? At Windscale, they used uranium fuel rods inside graphite bricks, and to release built-up energy, they do something called Wigner annealing. Basically, heating the reactor on purpose. Except, this time, it overheated. Sensors were ignored, warning signs were missed, and suddenly, whoosh! The core caught fire. Yes, a nuclear reactor was literally on fire. Cooling fans made it worse. Carbon dioxide? Not enough. Eventually, they just grabbed a hose and sprayed water into a burning nuclear core. Miraculously, it worked, but too late. The fire burned for 3 days, releasing clouds of radioactive iodine and polonium. The government said nothing. They quietly destroyed 2 million liters of contaminated milk, but didn't tell the public until years later. To this day, Windscale Fire is believed to have caused hundreds of cancer deaths. And in the most British way possible, they changed the name of the plant afterward to Sellafield, like rebranding a bad restaurant. So remember, when your reactor is on fire, maybe don't just spray it with a garden hose and hope for the best. Welcome to Goiânia, 1987. The glowing blue trash that killed people. 2 scrap metal scavengers entered an abandoned cancer clinic. They found an old radiotherapy machine. It looked valuable, so they took it home and smashed it open. Inside was a capsule containing cesium-137, a radioactive isotope. It glowed blue in the dark, like something out of a superhero movie. Except this wasn't Marvel. It was lethal. They showed it off. Neighbors came to see the magic dust. Kids played with it. One guy rubbed it on his skin like body glitter. Another ate a sandwich with it on his hands. Within days, people started vomiting, bleeding, and losing hair. But no one knew why. By the time authorities realized what it was, 249 people were contaminated. 4 died painfully, including a 6-year-old girl who loved the glowing dust. Her body was so radioactive, she had to be buried in a lead-lined coffin inside a concrete vault. The house demolished. The soil removed. Even the guy who first found the capsule said, "I wish I'd never touched that thing." Goiânia wasn't a reactor meltdown. It was a human curiosity meltdown. Lesson of the day: if something glows in the dark, maybe don't touch it. Tokaimura, 1999. The day someone mixed uranium in a bucket. Japan, 1999. A nuclear fuel processing facility in Tokaimura was trying to speed up production. So they changed the procedure. Instead of carefully using automated equipment, 2 workers were told to pour uranium solution by hand into a steel bucket. Yes, you heard that right. They were manually mixing weapons-grade uranium like it was soup. They poured in 1 batch, no problem. Poured in a second, still fine. Then they added the 3rd batch. And boom! The solution went critical. A blue flash filled the room. Radiation started pouring out. One worker got so much radiation, his DNA was liquefied. He survived 83 days in agony with his skin falling off, organs failing one by one. The 2nd worker died later. The 3rd was seriously injured but lived. The reaction continued for 20 hours because nobody could get close enough to stop it without dying. Eventually, they drained the tank and shut it down. The fallout? Hundreds were exposed, a town was evacuated, and Japan rewrote its entire nuclear safety rulebook. So, what went wrong? Simple. Someone used a metal bucket to handle uranium fuel. Lesson learned. When your job involves radioactive material, eyeballing the dose is not the way to go.
Hello, guys. Let's dive into 7 hilarious moments that actually happened. Once upon a time in 1896, the British Empire was sipping tea and minding its business when Zanzibar got a new sultan who wasn't exactly their cup of tea. The Brits told the new guy, "Sorry, old chap, you're not approved. Step down or we'll be very upset." The new sultan replied, "Number." So, at exactly 9:02 a.m. on the 27th of August, 1896, the Royal Navy said, "Fine, have it your way," and started bombing the palace. They were super efficient. By 9:40 a.m., the Sultan had fled through the back door, his guards surrendered, and the war was over. Duration? 38 minutes. That's shorter than a pizza delivery in traffic. Casualties? Around 500 on Zanzibar's side. British side, 1 sailor sprained his back. The British then installed their preferred sultan, made a note in the diary, and probably went back to tea. And that's how the shortest war in history went down more of a loud British no than an actual war. It was a sunny day in 1807. Napoleon Bonaparte, the mighty conqueror of Europe, decided to take a break from wars and enjoy a little rabbit hunting party with his generals. Just some light shooting to unwind. So he ordered his men to prepare a grand hunt. And boy, did they prepare. They gathered hundreds, maybe even thousands of rabbits. Except plot twist, they didn't catch wild rabbits. They bought tame, cuddly, chubby pet bunnies from farms. The moment Napoleon arrived, and the cages were opened, the rabbits didn't run away. They ran toward him. Dozens, hundreds furry little balls of cuteness charging like Napoleon's own cavalry. They thought it was feeding time, not fleeing time. Napoleon tried shooing them. The bunnies kept coming. He ran. They chased him. Generals swung their hats. Bunnies attacked their boots. Napoleon, Emperor of France, defeater of nations, was forced to retreat to his carriage under full-scale bunny assault. It was the softest, most adorable military disaster in history. And from that day forward, one thing was clear. Napoleon could handle armies, but he could not handle bunnies. Let's rewind to the 4th of July, 1850. The U.S. was celebrating Independence Day. Fireworks, flags, full-on patriotism. And President Zachary Taylor was loving it. He was hot, sweaty, and in the mood to party, with snacks. So he helped himself to a mountain of treats. Cold milk, iced watermelons, and lots of cherries. Possibly also a few suspiciously rich cookies. What could go wrong? Well, everything. Within hours, the president was sick as a dog. Severe stomach cramps, fever, chaos. Doctors rushed in with cutting-edge 1850s medicine, which mostly meant guessing and hoping. They tried bleeding, purging, and more bleeding. Yes, that was real. It didn't help. 5 days later, Zachary Taylor died. Official cause? Acute gastroenteritis. Unofficial cause? He ate like it was the Last Supper. Some say it was poison. Others say it was just a deadly combo of cherries plus warm milk plus 1800s hygiene. Either way, the lesson is clear. Even presidents can fall to fruit and dairy. So picture this. It's 1828. In Mexico City, things are chaotic. Revolutions, riots, and apparently angry mobs smashing up bakeries. One unlucky French pastry chef, a guy who just wanted to make eclairs and go home, had his shop looted by Mexican officers and rebels. His cakes? Gone. His tarts? Smashed. His dignity? Baked. He demanded compensation from the Mexican government. They said, "Non, monsieur." Well, technically they said, "No," in Spanish. So what did he do? He went straight to the King of France, Charles X, and said something like, "Sire, I demand justice for my poor croissants." And the king? He didn't laugh. He said, "Justice shall be served with cannons." And boom! In 1838, France sent warships to blockade Mexico and bomb their ports. Over one French bakery. It lasted a few months, until Mexico agreed to pay 600,000 pesos for the bakery damages. That's one expensive eclair. And voila, that's how the pastry war happened. A war triggered not by gold, land, or power, but by cake. It's 1932. Australia's farmers have a problem. No, not the heat, not the drought. Giant, angry emus, thousands of them. These overgrown, flightless feather rockets were stomping through wheat fields like they owned the place. So what did the Australian government do? Call in pest control? Nope. They sent the military, with machine guns. Enter Major G.P.W. Meredith, leading soldiers versus emus. And guess what? The emus won. The birds ran too fast. They zigzagged like Olympic sprinters. They took bullets and kept running like nothing happened. At one point, the gun jammed, and the emus just casually walked off, probably laughing in bird language. They even split into strategic bird squads, flanking the soldiers. It was like a feathery guerrilla war. After several weeks, hundreds of rounds fired, and maybe a dozen emus down, the army gave up. Yes, Australia lost a war to birds that can't even fly. The emus kept the land. The farmers kept the trauma. And the army probably kept it quiet in their resumes. In the Middle Ages, Europe had some creative ideas about justice. Burning witches, trial by fire, and sometimes putting animals on trial. Yes, actual trials, with lawyers, for animals. And the most famous case? A pig. In France, 1386, a pig was accused of murder. Apparently, it had mauled a child, most likely by accident, but who needs facts? So, what did the villagers do? Call animal control? Nope. They arrested the pig, put it in a real jail, gave it a public trial, and even assigned a lawyer to defend it. The trial went like this. Judge: did the pig knowingly commit murder? Lawyer: Your Honor, my client oinks in innocence. Pig: oinks dramatically. Witnesses gave emotional testimony. The pig? Saturday there like, I just wanted some snacks, man. In the end, the court found the pig guilty of murder and sentenced it to death by hanging, just like a human criminal. And so it was. They hung the pig in public to send a message. Crime doesn't pay, even if you have hooves and a curly tail. Ah, yes, the Middle Ages, when pigs had lawyers, and people didn't have common sense. Let's rewind to the 4th of July, 1850. The U.S. was celebrating Independence Day. Fireworks, flags, full-on patriotism. And President Zachary Taylor was loving it. He was hot, sweaty, and in the mood to party with snacks. So he helped himself to a mountain of treats: cold milk, iced watermelons, and lots of cherries. Possibly also a few suspiciously rich cookies. What could go wrong? Well, everything. Within hours, the president was sick as a dog. Severe stomach cramps, fever, chaos. Doctors rushed in with cutting-edge 1850s medicine, which mostly meant guessing and hoping. They tried bleeding, purging, and more bleeding. Yes, that was real. It didn't help. 5 days later, Zachary Taylor died. Official cause? Acute gastroenteritis. Unofficial cause? He ate like it was the Last Supper. Some say it was poison. Others say it was just a deadly combo of cherries plus warm milk plus 1800s hygiene. Either way, the lesson is clear. Even presidents can fall to fruit and dairy on a hot day.